All right, next movement we're going to talk about is the deadlift. Now the deadlift, Taylor has deadlifted for me before. It was a good alternative. He wasn't able to squat for a while when he first got here because he had a hip injury. However, it was anterior hip. Since the deadlift is so hamstring dominant, we were still able to continue to get him stronger and use the deadlift as our substitute for our squat. So with my deadlift, I usually like to start my athletes off with some kind of 2-inch, maybe even 4-inch blocks, depending on how tall they are and on any mobility issues. As they get better, I'll work them down to the floor, but typically we'll start off with 2-inch blocks. So we started off on top of these plates, which are roughly 2 inches, so that we can have a little bit less mobility required and we can get in a little better start position. So with our deadlift, the main cues for the deadlift, the first thing, the most important thing is the setup. If you get the setup right, there's a good chance you're going to get the whole lift right. If you get the setup wrong, there's a really good chance that everything else is going to go wrong. So I always want them to set up at about their second shoelace on their shoe. They should be able to look down. About the second shoelace on their shoe should be underneath the bar. This gives them ample room that they can still get some forward translation of their tibias, but the bar is still very close to them. So next thing that I want the chest to stay up, I want the butt to go back and the knees to go soft, like I talked about in the RDL. Now, from there, we're descending to the bar. The bar may roll a little bit forward. That's all right, because that's just going to depend on what their torso length is, what their tibia length is, and how that works out. So from there, the big difference between the deadlift and the power clean. With the power clean, you want the shoulders over or maybe slightly in front of the bar. With the deadlift, you want the shoulders behind the bar. This is going to allow us to get the teeter-totter effect as we rock back. So with the deadlift, we've got the chest up, we've got a big arch at the back, at the bottom of the back. The one thing I tell them, I want you to squeeze your butt to the top of your shoulders and the top of your shoulders to your butt. This is going to make sure we're completely locked in. There's no way that you can round over, at least not without a heavy weight when you're locked in like that. So feet are about shoulder width apart. It's going to vary for some people. Conventional stance they're going to want to hear. We're not going to address sumo stance in this demo, but we'll talk about it at a later time. So conventional stance, feet are about shoulder width apart. Hands are just outside the legs. Whatever is comfortable for you is fine. Now if you go too wide, then we're turning it into a snatch grip deadlift, and it's a completely different exercise. So we're squeezing the butt back, we're squeezing the shoulder blades back, we're sitting our butt back, coming down and descending to the bar. There's no need to go any farther than you need to go. I always have my athletes do a double overhand until the weight gets too heavy for them to handle it like that. From there, we are not standing up, we're pushing our hips forward to the bar. So keep the bar close, we're going to push our hips forward to the bar. Here. So at the top of the deadlift, I should be able to see your butt round under. Even if you've got a really monster anterior tilt, you should still round under at the top of your deadlift as you finish off the lift with the hips. What I don't want to see is athletes who finish off the lift with their back. So we're here, and this is where I see most of them finish. Your torso should be erect, your hips should be under. That's as far as we need to go. That's a locked out deadlift. Another thing that I want them to get before they start deadlift is how to breathe. So we want to breathe from the diaphragm. The example that I usually use, a lot of athletes were in band when they were young. So in band, you learn not to breathe with your shoulders. It's the same exact thing. So I want you to breathe through your stomach. So what we're going to do is put your hands on your side. Now, you're going to take a deep breath. You don't want to see your shoulders rise, but you should feel your hands expand out. You should feel them expand out to the side and forward. So deep breath here, and then breathe out. Just go ahead and hit a few breaths there. With a deadlift, more important than almost any other lift to have the breathing correct. Other lifts, breathing does a great job of helping. It also protects you, but especially in the deadlift where the core is taxed so much, we want to make sure that they can breathe correctly. So, Taylor, go ahead and step up. So when they deadlift, after they're set up, we're going to take a big breath. We're going to hold it through the top of the lift. So big breath, tighten the abs, tighten the core, and then we're sending our hips toward the bar. Hips go to the bar. Good. And that's where we're going to finish at. Good. I always encourage my athletes, when we're doing multiple reps of deadlifts, feel free to drop the bar, feel free to lower it and then drop the bar. I always want the setup to be perfect before we start, so you can reset anytime that you need to. So go ahead and do a couple more reps at this height. So make sure that we're close, that bar is close enough to us. Good. 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 Accelerate those hips through the bar. You don't have to do it slow for the camera. There you go. Still do it right though. There we go. Better. All right. Now, the setup of the deadlift is going to change a little bit depending on the height. Like you saw with Taylor, he's a little bit taller than I am. At this higher height, for him, he needs to set up more at about the third or fourth shoelace. Now, when we take it down to the ground, now we need to set up a little bit closer to the bar. Generally, if you're scraping your shins up during the deadlift, you're probably doing it pretty close to correctly. So, from the ground, everything stays the same. We set up close enough to the bar that the bar is almost directly on our shins as we start, maybe just a hair off of it. Just enough that our shoulders can get behind the bar, pitching our butt to our back, pitching our shoulders to our butt. We're down, shoulders stay behind the bar, big breath, hips go to the bar, and we're good. I'll you one more time. Now with the lowering of the bar, Taylor's really good about lowering it down in control and going back down the same way he came up. However, if you can't do that, then I suggest that you just dump the bar completely. So we want to make sure that his feet here are completely planted on the ground. A lot of athletes get into this habit. They want to get down to the bar and roll it out, and they get up, and they're on their toes, and by the time that they go to their pull, their shoulders are already in front of the bar, their weight's already forward on their toes, and we've got a terrible deadlift coming up. So we want to make sure that just like in the squat, weight's evenly distributed, heels should stay planted. You should even be a little bit biased backwards in the deadlift because we want to get that teeter-totter effect. So go ahead and start. Chest up, butt up, good, hips to the bar, good. Good. Make sure we're still breathing, deep breath before the lift. Good. Now with a lightweight like this, where he's not straining that much against it, he can hold his breath for several reps. However, I usually would recommend that you hold your breath to the top, breathe out, then rebreathe if you're gonna go down and touch and go. So we would go to the top, big breath here, breathe out, rebreathe, and then hold it through the next rep. Anytime that you're going to rebreathe, it should be at the top of the lift, and that can go for anything, for the squat, for the deadlift, for the bench, anything that you're going to be holding your breath and doing a Valsalva maneuver. That is it for the deadlift, and I hope to see y'all on Friday.